Hi everyone, thanks for joining me once again. My name's Peter, this is Thailand Bound, and today I'm going to be reading out 4 viewer stories. Okay, before I get into the stories, I'd like to talk about something very briefly. If you're one of those people who are a little bit impatient and you like to jump straight to the story, there is a timestamp below, you can go straight there. I just want to address a question that comes up very often, and I've never really spoken about it. I have answered emails and replied to comments. And that is a question of alcohol and bars in Thailand. Now, a lot of people, they don't drink, but they'd like, when they go to Thailand, they've never been there before. And the question to me is, I don't drink any alcohol. Can I still go into go-go bars and those sort of places? Because at the end of the day, people who go on vacation, they don't have these kind of venues for the most part in your own country. And the question is, I don't drink, or me and my wife don't drink, can we go into a go-go bar or will they throw us out? I'll just explain it for you briefly. So if you don't drink, you're more than welcome to go in any venue in Thailand, go-go bars, beer bars, wherever. Now, what will happen is you'll be charged a similar price for an alcoholic drink. Now, I've had people come to me and say, oh, they ripped me off. You know, I can buy a soda water in 7-Eleven for 15 baht, which is true. But I went into that go-go bar and they charged me 140 baht. But what you got to remember, when you go into a go-go bar, you're not paying for the soda water. You're paying for the whole package. So when you go into 7-Eleven and you pay 15 baht for a soda water, you go outside, you can sit in the street on the steps in the hot sun and drink your soda water, hence 15 baht. When you go into a go-go bar and you're charged 140 baht, you're sitting on their very comfortable seating, you're enjoying their very cool aircon, you're having a waitress bring the drink to your table, you're having a waitress pour the drink for you, you've got entertainment on stage, you're listening to all the music, there's all the lighting, there's a toilet in the venue that you can use. That's what you're paying for, it's a whole package. So in answer to the people who've asked the question, can I go into a go-go bar and not drink alcohol? You can, but don't expect it to be cheap. You're not getting ripped off. If a beer, easy numbers, if a Heineken beer is say 180 baht in a go-go bar, which is quite normal, you'll probably pay about 140 baht for your soda water. And that's the same whether you drink Sprite, Coke, whatever. I used to drink soda water because to reduce sugar, I didn't want to take too much sugar into my system, as it were. So I hope that's answered the question for all those non-drinkers out there. And without any further delay, we'll jump into the stories now. I've got 4 good ones for you, as always. I say that every week, but it is true. 4 great stories, and let's get into story number 1.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Before revealing the moment that almost made me fall to my knees and return home while still at Bangkok airport, let me tell you about my mental status of that morning. The night before leaving Australia, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep more than an hour or 2. Although the Thailand pass was quite easy to get, it was something that stresses me out and gives me that feeling of missing or forgetting something. Do I have my passport? Where did I put the proof of my vaccinations? Will my Australian debit card work in Thailand? My flight was Thursday the 16th of June at 6 p.m. and at 1 p.m. I realised I had forgotten to apply for an international driving permit. In Perth, there are only 2 or 3 places where you can apply in person, and for once I had some unexpected good luck, as one of these offices is just 5 minutes drive from my house, so I rushed over there. Despite the lady being very helpful, I needed a passport size picture for the permit, so I made a dash for the post office, and yes, you guessed it, I had to wait in line for 30 minutes. 2:15 p.m. and I'm finally back home, and my annoying looking ex-girlfriend is yelling at me, where the hell have you been? No wonder she's earned the title of my ex-girlfriend. 3 p.m. and I finally finished packing my suitcase. 3:30 p.m. Perth International Airport. Wow, the panic is over. I can finally slow down, or so I think. The flight I booked has a 1-hour delay. I'm starving and I've just realised I only had a few coffees and no food all day. I'm finally on the aircraft, but no announcements about an in-flight meal. 11:45 p.m. I arrive at Singapore airport and have 7 hours to wait until my next flight. I should have planned my trip better rather than just go for the best deal on a cheap ticket. Midnight and I'm now exhausted. It's hard to sleep on 3 plastic chairs while your neighbour is telling his life story in Arabic to somebody in the Middle East. Delayed, but at 8:40 a.m. my flight to the land of smiles finally lands, and I start feeling happy and a bit dizzy because of the sleep deprivation. Arrived Bangkok, passport stamped and ready to buy a SIM card in the airport. The lady in the phone shop tells me they only accept Thai baht and not international currencies like most of the duty-free shops inside the terminal. Of course, I'm carrying 10,000 Australian dollars, the maximum you can take without filling out a declaration. That's approximately 25,000 Thai baht. So dizzy, pumped and rushing to get my next connection to Ubon Ratchathani in the north of Thailand, I put the envelope with the 10k back in my backpack, but in my mad rush I don't close the zip properly. If you're wondering why, I was also busy getting my passport back from the SIM card lady, who had now stopped smiling at me by this time. While running to the money exchange to get the 799 Thai baht for the SIM card, my mind was a perfect storm. Am I going to miss my flight? Should I get the SIM card later on? How can I activate the free Wi-Fi in the airport? My thoughts were interrupted by the voice of a young Thai lady in her 20s who was running towards me. Sir, I was surprised as I didn't know anybody at the airport. What the heck have I done to her? Are there any issues with my Thai pass now? She stopped and offered me back an envelope full of green banknotes. Sir, you lost your money. I'm still shaking thinking about that moment. I could have wiped out almost half of my holiday budget. I took $200 out of the envelope. I offered it to this charming petite young girl who politely refused and said, "No sir, this is your money. Please take care better." I sat for a moment, then I broke down. All the stress of the past 24 hours had built up without me realizing, and along with sleep deprivation, hunger and worry, my body finally gave in. Looking back, I think it was this one kind act of the pretty girl handing me back my cash which finally was the trigger. I cried like a baby for a couple of minutes, but felt so much better once the stress of the day was released. What a wild first hour in Thailand. Forget the SIM for now, go straight to check-in, destination Ubon Ratchathani. I'm emotionally drained, exhausted, but extremely excited after 2 years. I'm finally back in the best place I love so much. Welcome to Thailand. Yeah, it can be very, very stressful. I'm one of those sort of people who, you know, I'm ready weeks in advance. It's all laid out in the bed, you know, ticket, cash, clothes, what I'm going to wear to the airport. You know, I'm a little bit regimented like that. But the other thing I'd like to say is, it's always amazing, you know, we hear so many stories about the Thais trying to scam you or rip you off in tuk-tuks, things like that. And here's this girl who found quite a lot of money and handed it back to him. Now, I had a similar experience. I was staying in the Omni Tower in Soi 4 a number of years ago, and I had one of those bum bags, you know, the bags that go around your waist. And I had about 20,000 baht, and I came back from a shopping trip, and I took it off, and silly thing to do, but I started swinging it around while I was waiting for the lift. And the zip was open. Now, I didn't realise. I went up to the room, had a shower, and I was planning to go back out. I went out and I still didn't realise I'd lost the cash. I got to reception and one of the guys called me over, "Come Peter," and I said, "Yeah, what's up? Have you lost some money?" And I looked in the bum bag, panicked because it was empty. And I said, I have lost some money. He said, "How much was it?" And I said, "It's 20,000 baht." And he said, "Yeah, we found it here." He called the maid and he said, this lady found it. And of course, the first thing I did was I thanked her, I why'd her, because, you know, it's one thing thanking them, but, you know, to do it in their own language or their own culture is a much better way to say thank you. So I why'd her, and of course I give her quite a generous amount of money out of the bag. So, you know, when you hear all these stories about dishonest Thais and people trying to rip you off, there are most of the people in Thailand are actually very, very honest. Okay, right, let's jump into story number 2. This story took place in 2013 when I was working as a teacher in Rayong. One weekend, myself and a friend from my school decided to have a night in Bangkok and enjoy Nana Plaza. I'm not sure about now, but at the time, the only way to travel between Rayong and Bangkok without your own transport was by the Toyota commuter minibuses, aka minibuses of death. Any visitor to Thailand will know that these minibuses are typically filled to the brim with passengers with all kinds of weird and unusual smelling snacks, and driven by guys running on 3 hours of sleep, cheap energy drinks and junk food who race like a bat out of hell with the simple goal of arriving as quickly as possible, whether in one piece or not. The drivers are also looking at every possible thing except the road ahead. We arrived at the Victory Monument after a 2.5 hour white knuckle ride and made our way to Sukhumvit Soi 4. We checked into a hotel before going out. The night was a blur of Johnny Walker and Coke with a beer here and there. We ended up getting extremely drunk and both ended up bar finding girls. In the morning, my head was pounding and I was in no mood for morning aerobics. I simply gave the girl money for her taxi home, a nice tip, and she left. I tried sleeping for a bit more, but I couldn't. The room was spinning and I felt nausea every time I laid down. I got up and tried to be a bit active, going for a walk, thinking it would be good to get some fresh air and take my mind off the raging hangover. But the humid heat and smells of the Bangkok streets turned my stomachs and had me retreating to my air-conditioned room once again. I took a cold shower and before long, my friend knocked on my door. Myself being much more of a lightweight than him, my friend was annoyingly bright and alert that morning, while I felt like death warmed up. "Are you okay? You don't look good," he asked me. I told him I was fine. He had to work that afternoon, so as much as I wished I could have stayed in that hotel room fermenting, we ended up making the journey back home then and there. First we took the SkyTrain to Victory Monument. My stomach jumped with every wave and turn of the train carriage. I stared at the notice board as different stops came and went. Eventually we made it to Victory Monument, where we were to get one of the dreaded minibuses of death back to Rayong. My plan was to first buy the minibus ticket, then go to a 7-Eleven and buy some supplies including water, Alka-Seltzer and food, as they usually leave us waiting for 10 or 15 minutes while they waited for other passengers. But this backfired when the driver ushered us into the van immediately, as it was already full of passengers and ready to go. I requested to sit at the front in the passenger seat, explaining to the driver in broken Thai that I suffered from travel sickness, but he refused. Just my luck, as I was shoved into the only remaining seat at the back corner of the minibus at the furthest possible point from the doors. We set off into the Bangkok traffic and my nausea got worse by the minute. I closed my eyes and tried meditating, willing myself to believe that the highway would be better without the turns and stops starting of the city streets. It wasn't. The guy drove just as recklessly as they all do, swerving in and out of traffic like a man possessed. I took deep breaths of air, but someone in the van had started eating smelly hot dogs on sticks. I knew at some point between Bangkok and Chonburi there was a large service station with multiple shops and fast food restaurants. I fantasized about stepping into an air-conditioned 7-Eleven, buying some ice-cold water, travel sickness pills, electrolytes and food. Snapped back out of my fantasy by a bump in the road with a dry mouth and a cold sweat, I very quickly realised my stomach was going to evacuate. I didn't even have a plastic bag to unload into. My friend looked at me and said, "Your face is green, are you alright?" I feebly asked the driver in Thai to stop as I needed the toilet. He sighed and started to slow down, moving into the left lane. My dreams of the lovely service station with its chilled 7-Eleven were dashed when we pulled up at a derelict service station with little more than a police stop and a dirty, disgusting toilet, and just in time as well. The van stopped and the door opened and I darted out into the hard shoulder just as I threw everything up I had eaten and drank in the previous 12 hours. My friend got out laughing at me and patted my back. I tried insulting him between retches. Eventually I finished and a kind lady from the bus offered me a small bottle of water. I thanked her and got back on board. Everyone was staring at me, the guy next to me with a look of terror on his face, probably thinking I would vomit over him. For the rest of the journey, I closed my eyes and dreamed of my bed. It was the longest minibus journey of my life. When we finally arrived back in Rayong and I stepped onto solid ground and walked into the nearest 7-Eleven, I could have kissed the floor. I took sips of fresh, cold water and sat on a chair basking in the air conditioning. Eventually I got home and spent the remainder of the day sleeping. Moral of the story, always make sure you have supplies on you before getting into a minibus, or better yet, just don't get into a minibus. A terrible experience, never to be repeated. I hope you enjoyed this gruesome story. Well, I know exactly where he's coming from. You know those Toyota kind of luxury minibuses? They're very nice minibuses actually, but the drivers, they do drive very, very scary. I've taken a couple, several actually, and if I want to save cash, you know, you can get to, for instance, if I go to Hua Hin, it's 2,000 baht in a taxi. you know, you might be able to haggle a little bit, 100 baht here, 100 baht there, but it's about 2,000 baht. Now, if you get a minibus, it's 180 baht, so it's quite a saving. If you're going down there for a weekend, that saving will pay for your budget hotel for a couple of nights. But I don't like them because I am scared all the way down because they drive very erratically. They weave in and out of traffic, and there have been many cases in the past where these things have flipped, they've gone off the road, people have been killed, and I'm not paranoid, but you know, I just don't enjoy a journey, you know, where I'm actually frightened. So if I want to save cash and I go down to somewhere like Pattaya or Hua Hin, I prefer the blue buses, the coaches. They're more like coaches because they are big vehicles, and if something was to hit them, you know, you stand a much better chance. And also the driver can't weave in and out of traffic. They're not as nimble. You know, people take those minibuses every day and they don't have problems, but they are quite scary. When I travel, I like to enjoy the view. I'm not in a hurry, and I'd rather get there in one piece, if that makes sense. All right. So, right, I'm going to get into story number 3. This is the longest story today. Now, I need to give you a bit of a little bit of background on this story. Now, this story is from a guy. I first met this guy about 2 years ago when we were in full lockdown. His background, he's Australian, and he is a tech support assistant. So, you know, you have a laptop, you have a problem with your screen or something doesn't work, you phone up support and you get these guys on the other end who'll talk you through the process. So he was able to work from home in Australia, and because he was working from home, he also had a lot of time on his hands living by himself, and he went online and he got into the whole Thailand thing. No experience, totally naive, didn't know anything about it, and he was talking to girls in the infamous Soi 6 in Pattaya. Now, if you remember back then, they closed all the bars, and the only way these girls could make money, they did live stream. So they're in the bar, like a virtual kind of night out in a bar. Guys were buying them drinks online, and they get a drink, hold it to the camera and say cheers, drink it, and they had little conversations, and I'm guessing they went off camera and went onto the line app and had these private conversations. Now, this guy who's the next story we're reading, I actually spoke with him, I corresponded with him, I didn't speak with him, we emailed each other, but he'd informed me back then that he'd fallen for a girl in Soi 6. She worked in one of these bars in a skimpy outfit, and he was basically sending her quite a bit of money quite often, and she basically told him the normal kind of stories. Him by being naive, not stupid by any means, he just didn't have any experience with Thailand. He actually fell for her lines, and she'd say, you know, I've just come to work in the bar today or yesterday. I don't like working here. I'm looking for someone nice and blah, blah, blah. Normal story. And he kind of fell for it, hook, line and sinker. He's moved on from there now. He's not naive any longer. And but it was just, you know, I remember him telling me we talked to each other when she puts the phone on the pillow next to on the bed, and she'll talk to me until she falls asleep and all this sort of thing. And, you know, you think of everywhere in Thailand, of every city, of every town, wherever, that, you know, the one place this girl is in Pattaya, in Soi 6. You know, it doesn't get any worse than that. So, you know, at the time, it's very hard to tell somebody. You don't want to insult somebody and say, look, you know, the girl you're falling in love with is actually whatever. You know, you just don't want to do that. So I tried to tread gently. I tried to give some advice in a nice way. Luckily, he didn't. I spoke to him later on. He didn't go. When he went to Thailand, he didn't go and meet her, and it kind of fizzled out. But this is his story. He eventually the lockdown's finished. He went to Thailand and he had a little bit more luck. And this is his continuation of his Thailand experience. It's the longest one today, so let's jump straight into it. Okay. So this is a follow-up from my Soi 6 girl in my original story from April 2021. I still have her line ID, but messages and contact dried up middle of last year, besides other than to wish her a Merry Christmas and also a Happy Songkran. Eventually, so often, I have a Facebook stalk, and I found out that she is no longer working in the bar, but is a freelancer and has some sponsors, and actually, thank God, it wasn't me. Although I still have a soft spot for her, I understand a lot more now how the game is played. Also, back then between November 2020 and June 21, I was under lockdown in Australia, a bit depressed and naive about bar girls and the nightlife scene in Thailand in general. So January 2022, I took my first trip to Thailand with the Phuket Sandbox. I took a PCR test before leaving Australia and another test when I arrived in Thailand. I had to do the quarantine in a hotel, and the next morning I was free to go. I still had a test to do on day 5, so I did my best to limit contact with people and carried around hand sanitizer with me everywhere. I did the typical tourist thing during these 5 days, just wandering around. Something I found enjoyable from the first day of my trip was relaxing on the beach in a deck chair, drinking beer. A simple raise of my hand with an empty bottle and they came and gave me another one. Add to that the occasional hawker selling snacks. I was in heaven. This was my first trip to Thailand and I know I made a lot of rookie mistakes, like being ripped off by tuk-tuk drivers and the like. They would always charge me a flat minimum of 200 baht. I probably spent 5,000 baht in the first few days getting around until somebody introduced me to the app Bolt. Same trip that I was charged 200 was now 40 baht in a Bolt taxi. So after the 5 days PCR test, I figured it was now my chance to really live it up. I headed to the famous Bangla Road and spent a few hours sitting at the front of a bar just people watching. I had a chat with one lady, but she disappeared after 2 drinks. Before I knew it, it was 11 p.m. All the lights went out and the music stopped by 11:05. I finished my beer and started to walk back to my hotel. Then a very attractive lady pulled me into a go-go bar and said, I thought you closed at 11 p.m. She said, no, we're open until 3 a.m. I bought her a drink and we started to chat. At this stage, I had a belly full of beer. I was tired and looking to end the night. So I said to her, you come to my room till morning? She said, 5 drinks first. No way was my response. Let's just go now, she said. 7,000 baht for me and a bar fine of 2,000 baht. I thought about it for a bit and I said, okay, but you not leave room until 10 a.m, right? We can also have breakfast in the hotel if you want it. Also, we have fun tonight and tomorrow. She laughed and said, okay. I had a great time with this lady, but now realize I was very overcharged for her time. Over the next several days, I met a massage lady 3 times. She didn't speak much English, but she was lovely. So very quickly, it is day 10 and my last night in Phuket before heading to Bangkok. I wanted a quiet night. I went to Scar Bar on Kata Beach to watch some fire twirling and down a few quiet Leo beers. While chatting to an expat from the UK, he told me about O-Top Bar Complex in Patong. A lot cheaper than Bangla Road and a lot of fun. It was 10:40 p.m. I jumped in a taxi and headed there. I arrived just as the lights had been turned off, but everyone was still hanging around. The place has a few open bars around the outside and a lot of circular bars in the middle. Although a lot of the bars had not been finished, it looked like a good place for a night out. I met 2 different expats, one who owned the bar I was sitting in, a woman who was behind the bar, and another who told me he is building the biggest bar in O-Top, 2 stories high with a very large VIP area. They were planning on opening in 2 months' time. After sitting at the bar for about 15 minutes, 3 girls turned up. I worked out they were from another bar and had finished work and wanted to have a few drinks before they went their separate ways. The bar building expat told me, you know, if you like them, for 2,000 baht you can take 2 of those ladies back to your room for private drinks together. Wow, I said. So me and this guy both chatted and flirted with these ladies. One of the ladies was called Om. I found out she was 40 years old but definitely didn't look like 40. She had never worked in a bar before and had only started working there 3 weeks ago, she said. She told me that she had never been out with a customer and she didn't drink alcohol. The guy I was with seemed to know the area well and he seemed to also be clued in to the locals. I asked him if what this girl was telling me was true or she was feeding me BS. I had to go to the toilet but didn't know where they were. Om offered to show me and we walked together. On the way, I asked her if she would like to come back to my hotel with me for drinks. She joked and said, no, I'm not sexy enough for you. She then very seriously said, look, I'm not joking with you. I haven't been with a customer for. I said, look, I'm a decent guy and I'll give you a decent tip if you change your mind. I'm in a very nice hotel and we can have a nice meal together in the morning. She told me that it was a lovely offer, but her answer is still no. I thought, right, it's time to play my ace card. I came right out and said it, 300,000 baht. Correction, the amount offered was actually 3,000 baht, not 300,000 baht. A tip for you. Her face changed instantly and she responded with a firm yes. So much for her never going with a customer. Of course it was all a game. She was very experienced and I had one of the best nights of my life. As I said, I was supposed to head off to Bangkok today, but I was enjoying my time so much, I thought I'll stay another day in Phuket, and I asked her if she would like to spend the day with me. She smiled and said, yes. We spent the day lazing around the hotel, then went for dinner to a restaurant that was on the hillside behind Patong. We were really getting on well. She told me that she had never worked in the bar and that she was just doing it for 2 months to pay for her 15-year-old son's school fees, which were 20,000 baht. He was living with her uncle in Bangkok. She told me that her son is the only person in her life that she cares about. Before this, she was working for a law firm in Bangkok doing paperwork. It closed down due to COVID. She also did random cleaning jobs, but just couldn't earn enough money to pay the school fees. Told me that her friend had lent her money to buy a ticket to come down to Phuket to try and earn some decent money making drinks with foreigners in the bars. Previously, she had been to Italy and she had lived with a guy who was 5 years older than her, but the relationship didn't work out because the guy's mother didn't approve. Back at the hotel, I started thinking to myself, I'm not falling in love with this girl, but we are getting on really well. As was from Bangkok, I said, look, you know I'm going to Bangkok, why don't you come with me? You can show me around. I'm sure I'll see more of Bangkok with you than by myself, and I know you need to earn money for your son, so I'll give you 10,000 baht to help you, which will be better than hanging around the bars in Phuket. Looked at me and said with almost disbelief in her face, really? You mean it? I can come with you? I said, yes, of course, I'll pay for everything. We'll have a good time together. We'll eat some good food, drink and have fun. Thought about this and said, yes, that's fine. I'd love to do that, but I need 500 baht a day on top. Is that okay? I agreed to this. On the flight to Bangkok, I started joking with her and I told her I don't believe she's 40 because she looks much younger. She took out her passport to show me, which is where I saw the stamp she had obtained to enter Italy. So this part of the story all added up. We stayed in a place I had already pre-booked in the middle of Asok and right in the thick of it. I booked this not realizing that I would have company. The reason I had booked my room here was because it was a 5-minute walk from Soi Cowboy. It was close to Terminal 21 Mall, the MRT and the BTS stations were also close by, so a very, very handy location for a single man in Bangkok. The first night in Bangkok, we went to eat noodles. It already felt great having this girl with me. She knew exactly where to go to find good, cheap food, and having her as company was a very nice experience. While we were eating dinner, I asked her if she doesn't go with customers, why she had changed her mind back in Phuket and accepted my offer. She told me that the school had called her and said she needed to pay 2,000 baht fees because if she didn't, they would have to remove her son from school as the fee she had to pay was already very late. She also went on to tell me that coming to Bangkok with me was a bonus to her because she would be able to visit her son, which she couldn't do if she was stuck in Phuket. She showed me around Bangkok and could haggle with the tuk-tuk drivers, so we ended up going from one side of the city to the other for only a few hundred baht. We went to temples, visited Chinatown, and she showed me around her neighborhood, which was very interesting. One night I bumped into a popular YouTuber who is also from Australia and we had a few beers together, a real down-to-earth guy. After a couple of hours I called and told her to come and join us as we were going to head off to a pizza restaurant to eat. After we finished eating we went out to explore a few more entertainment venues. We ended up in a venue that was in a dark alley where we had to climb a couple of flights of stairs. I have no idea what kind of a place it was, but the good thing about was that she didn't drink so she could look after us. I told her, look, whatever happens, please make sure we get back to the hotel. We did at about 4 a.m. After about 5 days in Bangkok, I was becoming a little bit bored. Had told me that she had a driving license to be able to drive a car. I told her I'd like to see some more of the Thai countryside. Would she be interested in driving me around? She said yes, that would be fine. I didn't want to rent a car from a main car rental place, so I asked if she knew anybody who would rent us a car. She told me her uncle knew somebody, and it turned out that we ended up getting an almost brand new hatchback for 1,000 baht a day, which I was really happy about. The only stipulation was that if we did more than 10,000 kilometers, we would have to change the oil. I couldn't see that happening. On the last night in the hotel in Bangkok, asked me if she could invite her niece and a friend to come and use the swimming pool. I thought about it. I thought, why not? Was so happy. She said to me, "No man has ever treated me like you. You are so kind." Her niece and friend really had a good time using the hotel pool. It made me happy to see them having a good time. And of course, I bought them all drinks and snacks. The next day, we headed to Kanchanaburi, 3 hours west of Bangkok. I knew this area was a big part of World War II with the Death Railway. Something I learnt was it is said that for every sleeper that was laid for the railway, a POW died to make it happen. 16,000 in fact, and a further 90,000 civilians died. A very emotional place. After 3 days, we then headed south through Ratchaburi and Phetchaburi, seeing some of the sights along the way before stopping off in Hua Hin for a few nights. We managed to go to the Sunday food market. This was great, and we ate too much before finding a bar with live music. I then paid for to go and have a real-time massage next door while I drank White Russians watching the band. We had a great night. It was really great having her around. She was a lot of fun. I kept my guard up in regards to not falling in love with but it was difficult as she was always very affectionate and caring towards me. From Hua Hin, we headed south to Chumphon and stayed there for a night. Apparently, this province is named after one of the Thai princes who created the Thai Navy. We went to a museum dedicated to him. It is called the Royal Chumphon Torpedo Boat Museum, if any viewers are interested in visiting the museum. The next day, I said, "Let's keep going south if you are okay driving." I said I wanted to see Krabi. She said okay. Along the way, we stopped at Khao Non Nai, a beautiful temple that is in the mountains. After this, we carried on all the way down to Onang. Driving through Krabi was amazing. Such a beautiful part of the world with limestone cliffs that pop up straight up. In Onang, we stayed at a top hotel. For only 2,500 baht a night, we had a top floor room that had a jacuzzi on the balcony and had a view of the beach. I knew that close to Krabi was a famous James Bond island and Maya Bay, and we could do these trips. So for the next 2 days, we visited these places. Eventually, the trip had to end and we made our way back to Phuket. I was then told that I needed to settle Om's bar fine for being away from her bar. I shouldn't be so surprised, I guess. Drove me around Phuket to some parts of the island that I hadn't discovered before I met her. This was also tremendously great fun and interesting, seeing sights like the Big Buddha Temple and a few other parts. Took me to the airport. When I got there, I found out that 3 weeks earlier, Qantas had stopped flights from Phuket to Sydney. I later found an email confirming this. It's not like you check your emails on holiday anyway, is it? Although the Go2Gate app, it still showed my flight is on schedule. I guess the two companies don't speak to each other. Oh well, lesson learned, book direct. I said to you need to drop the car back. Let's do a shotgun drive back to Bangkok. You can return the car. I get to spend another day with you. She was over the moon about this. We drove through the night. While I was in the car, I managed to book my flight the following day. As I had to do a PCR test 72 hours before I left the country, I didn't want that to run out, so I needed to book sooner rather than later. With a tearful goodbye from both of us, I said farewell to and told her I will be back for my 40th birthday in August. I told at the airport that I didn't want a long distance relationship, as I've had these before and they're very painful, but I told her, look, let's remain good friends. Was very upset about this and started crying because she told me she really liked me, but eventually she came around and told me that she understood. I booked on a flight for a few days' time from Bangkok to Phuket because I needed to book another flight from Bangkok to back home. I was running low on money, but I gave 30,000 baht, which was 12,000 baht for the car and 18,000 baht for her. I apologized and I said, I'm sorry, it's not more. She said it's okay and she could not thank me enough for being who I am. I asked her if she will continue working in the bar as I would like it if she didn't work in the bar anymore. I also asked her if she could find another job until I returned to Thailand. She said yes. She has another friend who has a beauty salon and a massage shop. She said she knows how to braid hair and she can work there. Since being back, we have remained in relatively close contact. I don't think there will ever be a future with us, as I cannot see myself living in Thailand, at least not for a few more years. Since February being home, I have sent Om 2,000 baht 3 times to help her out, which she has been very thankful for. I have begun to book my next trip to Thailand for August, when it will be my 40th birthday. 2 weeks into Bangkok and Pattaya, then I fly to Phuket. A great way to spend my 40th birthday, as some of my family will also join me in Thailand for my birthday. I might even meet up with Om. I'm not overstating the fact that had I not watched many of your videos about Thailand, I might have been very badly taken in. So thank you for sharing your knowledge of Thailand and for reading my story on your YouTube channel. So there you go. I think he's earned his stripes now. I don't think he's so naive, but the only thing I'd say, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but you know, if you ask a girl to give up the job she's actually doing at the moment to braid hair, of course she'll say, yeah, I'll do that, but she won't. She won't, believe me, guys. You know, it's a very, very small salary. Remember last week, the story of Om? This is Om, that was Om. Okay, right, we're going to finish with a very, very short story. This is from a guy from India. He lives in India, educated guy, got a good job. Short story, but quite interesting. I'm an Indian software developer by profession. I am 29 years old. I took my first trip to Thailand last month. I watched a lot of your YouTube videos. I read about the 3-day rule, the bar girl scams, etc. I do not want to go through any form of racism in Thailand, so I booked myself a suite at a nice 4-star hotel in Bangkok and booked a lady from Smooch, an online escort service. At the beginning, I booked the lady for 3 hours. She came to my hotel room on time. When I opened the door, I saw a smiling face. I asked her to come in. She sat on the sofa. I asked her if she felt comfortable with me because I'm an Indian. She said she was. I paid her the money right away as per the rules on the website, which said that I have to pay the full price within 20 minutes of her arrival. Aerobics took place within the first hour. After a couple of glasses of whiskey and Netflix, she just slept on my lap on the sofa, and I liked it very much. I asked her to extend the time by another 3 hours, which she did. We had another aerobic session and I gave her a nice tip. Later on, she left my room. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I never expected the girlfriend experience to be that good. The entire experience was very new to me and was a very enjoyable way to spend an evening. On my second night in Bangkok, I decided to book her for the whole night. Once again, she came to my hotel. The moment I opened my door, she leant forward and hugged me right away. She was wearing an even sexier dress than the night before. I already had bought another bottle of whiskey for us to enjoy. She opened the bottle soon as she seen it and did not even ask for money up front like the last time. After an hour of drinking and Netflix, she started showing me pictures of her dogs. She told me her mother suffers from diabetes and her younger brother became a monk. She asked me where I am going tomorrow. I said that I am leaving to visit Chiang Mai tomorrow and I would visit her again if possible. Because my return flight to India was from Bangkok, she asked for my number so that we could hook up again. In Chiang Mai, I kept receiving messages. She said she brought some presents for me and she wanted me to come back to Bangkok. She sent pictures of what movie she was watching, where she is shopping at, etc. I never started a conversation even once. It was always her. In the back of my mind, I kept telling myself this is likely to be a scam. But she never asked me for money, so I thought it would be a bit harsh to automatically judge her as a scammer right away. She kept on texting me even when I got back to India. After almost 3 weeks of texting, I really do feel that she is genuine and we have some kind of a connection. I'm thinking about planning another trip in Thailand September this year. Then one day while texting, she said, I like India very much and could you pay for a trip to India? All the confusion in my mind disappeared. I made up my mind that she was out to get what she could and I was simply another sucker in her eyes. I just told her I cannot afford to pay for a trip to India for her, and guess what? Yep, you guessed it. She never texted me again. I don't know if you will read out my story or not, but it might be helpful for guys who have never been to Thailand as a warning that these girls come across as really genuine when in reality they just want your cash. I am very thankful to you because if it was not for your videos and a few other YouTube channels, I would have already booked her flight tickets and lost a lot of money. I never experienced any form of racism in Thailand, which was good, and I will very likely visit Thailand again in November. I liked Chiang Mai and its food very much. The funniest part is I never set foot in any bars in Thailand and was inches away from being scammed. So there you go. A very down-to-earth story there. Can happen to anybody. Okay, I think he was kind of pushing on the racism button quite a bit there, but I think being Indian, he was probably a little bit paranoid after watching lots of videos, and quite rightly so, because you know, you do get these. I had a story from another Indian guy a few months ago, if you remember, and he tried to explain the Pattaya scene, where you see these big groups of Indian guys wandering around. They don't appear to sort of go into any bars or spend any money. And what he was explaining, that these guys, they're on a company trip. The company, they'll pay one trip a year for their employees to pick where they want. And Thailand, Pattaya to wherever in India is a relatively short trip, isn't it? So they tend to choose that. And I think with this guy, you know, obviously he's educated, he's got a very, very good job, and he's got this perception that when he gets to Thailand, people would be racism against him. But one of the other questions that comes up on this channel very, very often is people of colour who will contact me and they'll say, look, you know, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. How will the Thais react to me? And guys, if you've never been out there before, or girls, and this is an issue for you, take my word for it. If you've never believed anything I've ever said before, believe this. It doesn't matter what colour you are. When you go out to Thailand, it doesn't bother them. They're not racist in that way at all. And you will enjoy yourself just as much as the next person, okay? So a couple of points cleared up there. Right, as always, that's it for this weekend. I'm waffling on again, as always. I'll see you Friday, 9 p.m. for the live stream. As I always say, if you're not into the live streams, there'll be more stories next week. Thanks for sticking with it today, guys, and I'll catch you all real soon.